Welcome, everyone. My name's Jeff St. Laurent, and as you can see, I have a phenomenal guest, and let me tell you, he's phenomenal. I'm going to bring on in just a second. Before we get there, I do record all of my shows. I put them in my university on my website, sellingcoaching.com. I help coaches. Can you believe I didn't say my website right? I help coaches transition to a full-time business. So you can check out a lot of great information that I have on my website, sellingcoaching.com. If you want to start off right on the homepage, I've got a great resource for you, which is launching your full-time coaching business, your first 3 vital steps. You can also enter your name and email. That's going to put you in my community so we can stay connected and you can get a lot of great information from me on a regular basis. Now comes the drum roll. My wonderful, amazing client, Javier Lopez. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited.
This is so great having you back. And it's so exciting and rewarding, I think, for me and my students as well, when not only when they get on, right, but when they come back as well. And to give a little framework. So we're looking at some dates. And as of this recording, Javier and I started working about 3 years ago, right? It was like late 2020 or so, right before COVID. Worked my 5-month group program together. I think that ended towards the end of that year. And then like 3 or 4 months later, the beginning of the next year, we did like an advanced program. And it was just like, you just took off, man. And not only that, I'm just going to spill it all. And then we're going to get in the conversation. Javier and his wife also just published not 1, not 2. I'm not even going to be able to hold all these. Not 3, but 4 books.
4 books.
4 books. Government networking, soft skills, resumes, and if I can read, job interviews. So thegovgeeks.com. I'm going to put that in the chat in a little bit. But Javier, you're a monster. You're an animal. Let's talk this through. So when you came to me, and I'm going to get through this part quick because I want to get into the details of now, but you came to me about 3 years ago. At that point, you had been delving into your business. Talk about that point, how long it was. Just give people a little snapshot.
Absolutely. So in total, it has been 7 years that I've had the coaching practice, but really having the opportunity to work with you was 3 years ago. And that was the point that I definitely needed, because up to then I was trying to figure things out, putting things together, figuring out what the marketplace looked like, what this whole wonderful opportunity known as coaching actually was. So yeah, absolutely. It's been just about those 3 years.
Yeah. But overall, right, there's a 5 years prior to that of just trying to figure things out, put things together. And so the stuff we're talking about today isn't just like, oh, he just started his business 3 months ago. Like this, it takes years. And that's what I want to stress is like, so people starting their businesses off, you're in your first couple of years, like you got to be patient with yourself.
Absolutely.
So
be patient.
So Javier, we started our work. You really started moving forward. There's another interview people can watch, to get the starting phases. But I want to take us to the point where now you're, a year in with me, which is at that point, 6 years into the business or 5 years into the business, right? Talk about like now what's happening, like bring us to the point where, all right, we're deciding to write a book. Things are starting to move forward. Talk about what's happening in the business.
Sure. So up to this point, there's already been the mechanics behind establishing a business, an LLC, understanding what all of that stuff takes, working directly with other advisors to make sure that, the tax situation is done correctly, the financial structure is done right. And then also trying to kind of plan out dollars like, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to make a transition, leaving away a full-time job, which by the way, I love my career in government. When I walked away, I had over 20 years in federal government. I reached an executive level, which was fantastic, but I knew that there was something more. But at this point, like where you had mentioned, I was struggling to find out what I didn't know. And I knew that there was more stuff out there that I needed. And I knew that I needed to understand how to operate in that type of an environment. Because up to this point, really, my basic understanding is, okay, you get a job, you go 9 to 5, maybe you have some other like rental properties or investments and such. I know a lot of people are able to do that and do that well. But for me, I was like, how can I function in this coaching practice outside of this like norm? Because if I'm going to be the organization that I'm working for, well, what are the expectations? If I have a complaint from the IT department, do I yell at myself? How do I make all of this stuff work? And that's when I had the opportunity to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we started, really structuring things, coming up with a plan for you. Really, the a lot of the work we did in after our first 5-month program and the next 5-month program, the advanced stuff was really hitting that marketing really hard. And I feel like that's where, at least, we had a great group, but you kept coming back, and it's just like you were really getting yourself out there, getting a lot more business. Talk about like what that did for you in terms of, getting that ball rolling where you really started ramping up the business you were getting.
Well, I think one of the most important things was to identify the marketplace, like who is the target audience. So all of us as coaches, we have our niche areas, which is just wonderful. But how do I market to them? What are their needs? What is it that I would like to do? What would bring me joy and fulfillment in the work that I'm doing as well? How can I best serve this community? What is the right price point, and for which individuals in that marketplace. So there was a lot of research to understand just what the heck was going on, because it's not like you can just go, ta-da, and everything is magically done. We know this market, what's available, and who the competitors are, et cetera, all of that sort of stuff. How do I fit into this place? So the marketing was about first understanding, the nuts and bolts of the industry and the organizations that I would be partnering with. Then from there, like, okay, cool. Now, how do I put my message in front of them? How do they know that I'm going to be the one that's going to offer them the most value? Because there's a lot of options that they can choose from. So, what's the best strategy really to kind of introduce yourself to these areas? So that's when we started talking about, okay, well, how do we do outreach? Is it email marketing? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Doing weekly live shows? Is it building the communication for my email list and sending out updates and connecting with people? Doing direct messages on LinkedIn and other strategies like that? Having webinars and other free services that people can get some good value from, and then others can come in. And then also, what are the partnerships that I would need to make in order to make this stuff work? I mean, am I going to get an aid? Am I going to get promoters to try to help get the YouTube videos out there and promoted? Instagram, what have you, Facebook, LinkedIn again. So it was really kind of putting all of those pieces together. And what's amazing is that if you're listening to this now and you have a bit of question marks, like, whoa, man, Javier, you're talking about like a lot of stuff. Well, it was. And that's why having the chance to work with a mentor coach that knew this, had gone through this, was just so helpful for me.
Yeah, and it is a lot of work, right? But that's where I bring in the time frame, right? It's like this didn't happen overnight, right? It took years. And so talk about that, like you talk about, your niche, finding your message. I shared your website. We got, the Gov Geeks. We've got these 4 books. You had a government job, government books. Like talk about what is a Gov Geek? What is
Oh,
what
that's
is your message so people understand like where you're coming from?
the mission of the Gov Geeks is to help public servants get in and get ahead in government. And that's really the big thing. What we found a whole lot is that there are super qualified people out there that want to do work in government. They really care about public service, but because of the red tape, the challenges, the unknowns about how the application process works, they just didn't know how to do that. And then once they're in government, well, how do you get promoted? How do you get ahead? How do you partner with people well enough? How do you manage teams? How do you build a vision? There's a lot that happens in the workplace in general, but also in the federal government, especially, where an individual has some really great subject matter expertise and they get promoted, but they don't have that leadership skill and development that they need, or the career management insight to know how to manage their career. So we were very fortunate, Karen and myself, my geek chic partner, helping us here with the Gov Geeks. We were very blessed to have a lot of mentors and others guide us along. So we wanted to create our coaching practice to do for others what we had done for ourselves.
Yeah. and it's so cool. And I want to point out too, like when Javier came to me too, like here's this guy, he's rocking the bow tie, he's got Captain America, he's got the
Oh yeah.
flags, and I mean just very unique in the sense of he knew. Oh, he's showing the angles
Oh yeah.
and of everything. And that's what I remember, like, dude, when you're starting your setup, when you're playing around with the lighting and all that other stuff, like it all that just takes time. But you committed to a brand, you committed to a very specific message, a very specific audience with what you're helping them with. It shows people that if you can, and you're really niched down, nice and tight. And it shows that when you have passion, you've got experience, and that's like you said, you've worked your way up to an executive level position in the government, um, or which you were in, which we'll talk about that in a second. But you found a path for yourself, and you weren't afraid to commit to it because it was a part of your story. It was a part of your message.
Absolutely. Your mess is your message, right? And from what I've seen from talking to other agencies and organizations that are looking for coaches and looking for people like me, they have access to a lot of people who have experience in these different areas, such as risk management, leadership, all of that's great stuff. But what they don't have is an individual that's been there, that knows the challenges that they've done. And this is all of the stuff that for over 20 plus years I like lived and breathed. And so when you can have genuine conversations with them about things that are important to them, it's a heck of a lot easier to partner well enough with them. So yeah, coming. And then also, this is something that genuinely aligns with me. This is stuff that I really care about. So
Yeah.
it's really easy for me to get involved, to feel excited, and to really want to add value.
And it's who you are. It's who you are as a person, like you and your wife. Like it's so who you are, which is exciting. So a couple big things that we really are leading up to talking about. Number one is, so talk about what happened this June. So 7 years in the making. I'll give the floor to you.
7 years in the making. It was interesting because it was during my performance review, which was roughly around February or so. And I told my boss, I'm ready to make the transition. I have so many hours of leave that I can use. I'm essentially giving my notice that at the end of the calendar year, I'm going to make the transition out. And my boss was like, okay, sure, sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. We'll work on that. And then I was like, great. So then I started scheduling all of my coaching, all of my facilitation, training sessions, courses, work with universities and other organizations, all of that stuff out. And I began to plan out my annual leave so I can use all of that. Everything was done. So I started putting in the leave, going out doing the stuff, putting in the leave, going out doing stuff. And I sent my boss like a timeline, a calendar of all of that stuff on paper. And then eventually it comes down to like the May time period. And he's like, why are you taking so much leave? I was like, hey, man, we talked about this. This is my, and he's like, I thought you said another 2 to 3 years. And I'm like, no, I said this 1 year. So then he started to say, well, you're going to have to cancel all the leave. You're going to have to do this and that. And I told him, the agreement that we had come to, and he kind of like pulled back on all of that. So then I went back and I spoke with Karen, and I had all of these events lined up. And I'm like, do I go out and I cancel all of that after all the hard work and doing everything? So we had a really good heart to heart. And we came to the conclusion, no, let's just go ahead and transition out now. So in the middle of June is when my last day was. So I put in my retirement. It's a deferred retirement for me. I had the years in government, but I didn't have the age, so I couldn't actually take the full retirement at that point. So I thought, why not? Let's just give this a shot. Because of planning years prior to that, we had been saving up. So we had a good nest egg that we'd say, all right, if something goes sideways and, things weren't as great as we thought they were going to be, at least we had enough cash to hold us over until I can get back into government, something like that. But thankfully, the transition happened in June, and here we are now in end of September. And here's something that's amazing. And I want to share this with everyone, not as a brag, but as hopeful inspiration, because when I heard people tell these sorts of stories, it was amazing for me too. At this stage in September, I've already earned, thankfully, just 10 grand less than what I would have earned in a year working in government. So it's just like, technically speaking, I could be like, this was a great year. I'm going to take the rest of the year off. Of course, I wouldn't do anything like that because there's a lot of momentum and building up and where we're growing and everything. But just to know that there is some solid stability outside of a 9 to 5, because I know that's what a lot of people say, I can't leave the benefits. I can't leave the safety and security of a 9 to 5. There is stuff out there that you could do if you put in the effort and you find the right path for you that's meaningful for you. It can be done, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
It's so congratulations, like really. And like you said, that was a 20-year career in government, work your way up to executive level. And I'm glad you talked about that, Javier, income wise, right? Because I think, and you know me, like I'm never one to boast and talk about people's income and things like that, right? But at the end of the day, people need to know it's possible, right?
Absolutely.
It's very possible. And there's a lot of people that market like, oh, the 6 figures in 6 days and all this good stuff. But it's just like, what's going to be your path, right? And you can do it, and you can leave a very healthy job to create what you've created now. And it's only the beginning. And here you are, there's still a whole quarter left of the year, right? And you could cross over, it sounds like, into a multiple 6-figure year, right?
And
So
starting in earnest in June, having everything scheduled. So yeah, that ain't too shabby.
that's not too shabby. And so to surpass a otherwise very healthy income in a government that's supposedly, stable and secure and things like that, to take your passion and turn into there, like, and to leave there feeling great. And even like a deferred retirement, most people are like, oh, well, just stay in X amount more years, then you'll get, your pension or whatever. There'd be higher percentage, but you're like, now's the time.
Now's the time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just felt right. And thankfully, with planning, with the partnership of Karen, with understanding about how to kind of understand really well what would this look like, all of that. And again, it's not saying this as a way to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, look at me. I mean, when I was 7 years ago trying to understand the path, when I was 3 years ago trying to understand marketing and growth and everything, I was asking myself those serious numbers. Is the juice really worth the squeeze? Do I go out and get my certification? Do I pay X amount of dollars to work with a coach? Do I pay X amount of dollars for all of this other services and stuff? It can work.
Yeah.
And people are very humble and modest, and they don't want to necessarily share figures and such. Others, they use it as like a marketing strategy. I'm just using it hopefully as a tool here in this conversation to help people.
Yeah. And to me, that's where it comes across, right? And but people need to hear that. It's important to hear that stuff, because especially people, I'll get some people that I work with that are very high level executive corporate positions, earning multiple 6 figures, 500,000 a year or more. And now they're coming out of that, and now they're coming into a position where it's just like, how do I do this one client at a time? How do I get into this office where I'm just myself and a computer? And how do I turn that into, an income that supports more than enough for my family's needs? And that's a big ask. And
I'd
if
say
you've
so.
ever been in that space before, it can feel very daunting.
Everyone's calculation is their own. Everyone can say, I can live with this, I can live without that. This is what I need. This is what would be nice, sort of a deal. And once you kind of sit down, you do the numbers and you figure things out, these things are possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from leaving a 20-year corporate, a government job with all the benefits, excitedly, enthusiastically, let's talk about these books.
Oh, good.
These aren't just books. Like, these are thick, like these are well-written, thick books but it's like a series, right? So let's talk about the thought process of like, I think I'm going to write a book. I'm deciding to write a book, and the process, the snapshot version of it, so people can get an idea of what goes into something like this. Like, because I wrote a book, and great, it was a close to 400-page book, but this is a lot of work.
It's interesting. So the way that we structure the books, it's called the Gov Geeks Guide 2. So that's the series. Resumes, job interviews, soft skills, networking, all of that great stuff. And our thought process behind it was, do we just give them something that they could go out and, like read as kind of like academic exercise? Or is this going to be something that they can actually turn into and use? So it's almost also like a workbook as well. A lot of great content, strategies, referenced materials, links to different places on OPM's website, Office of Personnel Management, other things like that. But then there's really coaching questions baked into it, questions to help them kind of apply the information that they're going through, the connect the dots concept, as we call it in the book. And then there's additional resources as well. So they could be like, well, where can I get another book? How can I have another idea on this? How do I expand this area? We really wanted to make sure that it was something valuable for them. And also, it's going to sound terrible for my elementary school self, but you can write in the book. It's intended to be written in as well, to kind of help you through that process.
So cool. How did you and Karen come up with the idea of having, the comprehensive, like you said, it's soft skills, job resumes, networking. It's the complete 360 of what, like you said, what people need to know to get into government and then excel in government. But how did the idea come up with the 4 different books?
Oh my goodness. So as we're talking, I'm looking things up here just to kind of to share with you all. So if we look here on our YouTube page, Karen and I, we would do tons of videos. And what we ended up doing was coming back and then having those videos transcribed. And then from there, we just put that into the first draft. So when you do your Tuesday live shows, when you have conversations, when you go on, it's not just you throwing out content that's then forgotten. You can still use all of that great material. I found a person on Fiverr that was able to transcribe everything at a good, reasonable cost, put that into all of the materials. I found a wonderful publisher that supported us throughout the process and the writing and all of that as well. And before you know it, like more ideas started popping out. In fact, the resumes book, actually, it's on its 2nd edition. We've made a lot of updates and improvements to it to aid with an individual's growth process with resumes and career search. And the more ideas just kind of fed into it and helped.
It's so exciting. It's so
Right?
cool to hear, right? Like, you're like, listen, check out my YouTube channel. I transcribed all this stuff, and so then it's just taking that information and then putting it into a format for the different books.
Exactly. And so it's amazing. You go to like Amazon, the stuff is there. You go to Barnes and Noble. And it's interesting also because there's other partnerships that you can do. Like, for instance, and I know you know this and you teach it to your clients, but just to kind of share with everyone, you can get like a ton of author copies and then work with the local bookstore as like a promotion. So you work out a deal, you bring in the books, they sell it there at the register, they get a cut, you get a cut. You put it all on social media, take pictures, share it with everyone, meet the authors, the signature and all of that stuff. And for the bookstore, it's like, okay, cool. Our name is out there. We don't have to purchase the books. If they don't sell, things are good. And then for you, you're getting your name and everything out there. And it's not so much like, I go out and I sold 50 copies and oh my gosh, I made all this money. But to meet people, to have discussions that then lead to coaching conversations, what then leads to clients as well. I mean, there's all sorts of strategies on how to use these sorts of things out there.
Yeah. It's so cool listening to all this stuff. Like, it's so fantastic because that's exactly how it all happens. And you're right. It's not about the book sales. That's always nice to get that stuff in there. But more importantly, it's about the people you meet, the conversations, and what that leads to. And it's
Absolutely.
clear, like, all this stuff. Like, I remember listening to people like you when I was starting off, right? And I'm sure you're the same thing. We all have the people we listen to and we watch on YouTube and whatever. And now, like, we're one of those people, right? But but when you're not there yet, and when you're starting off, watching someone like yourself, and he's got these camera angles, and now he's sharing his screen and stuff
Exactly. Just like
that when you
transitioning things out. Yeah.
right.
It's
And
amazing.
all this stuff, and it just seems like it's so overwhelming, and it's just like, well, you had to figure that out. Right? It's like, how do I do that? No, number one, what do I want to do? And 2, how do I figure it out? And if I can't figure it out myself, who do I get to help me figure that out? And then I figure it out, and then it's awkward me doing it, but then I do it enough and I'm better at it and now proficient at it and I'm good at it.
And honestly, that's what was so great about having you as a coach. because there's a lot of stuff out there. You know, you can invest tons of cash in lights and cameras and microphones and thinking that this is going to be it. But is the juice right at that time? Is that worth the squeeze for that one thing? Is getting this other service helpful? Like, what is the bigger vision plan? How do you kind of structure things out? So in government for years, I did internal controls and risk management. So my mind was all about like, all right, what is the key risk indicator, performance indicator, et cetera? How do I know that I'm going to help myself help others? Because that honestly, at the end of the day, is really what I'm so excited about. If I can help an individual get into government or perform well in government, then they do a great job. And as a consequence, the world benefits because government does so many wonderful things to help support people locally, nationally, internationally. So this like one person, you know, if I could talk about like all the clients that I've had and the agencies that they're in, and they're sitting back telling me the stories about what they do and how they make a difference, that just like fuels me. So I could be in government doing a piece of that, but now I'm helping others do more of that, and I feel like I have just a much bigger impact.
Yeah. And if you, what's really shining through, and hopefully people hear this as well, is just the energy you have around it, the passion you have it, and service is in the front. Like you're serving government servants, right? The people who have that passion, who want that guidance, and that's what you lead with. That's you've always led with that, Javier, and that's why I was like, when you first came to me, I'm like, I could see that passion within you, and it's just like, okay, how do we now get to harness this passion and give it some formula? And what's cool about you is, and I think people can tell by listening to this, that's why I'm highlighting it if they can, is that you're also very well thought out. You're planned, you're structured, you have an execution, like just like even when you pick out things like you said to your boss, like, hey, I think I'm gonna transition out of here, and then you came up with a plan and a structure using your time. And obviously he didn't hear that, probably because he didn't want to hear it, but that's how you've come to operate your business as well. And
I
that's
appreciate you saying that.
for people to understand is it's not just, we don't just wing it, right? And people do it at different levels, but you have a plan and you have structure. And that's something you've always been like, and you found a way to do the research, figure things out to make it work for you.
Absolutely, I'm thankful for you mentioning that because honestly, that is a lot of the kind of behind the scenes stuff that you're doing. That you help me understand like the structure, the ideas, and so for me, thinking through like, how do I make this work? Is this even something that's possible? It definitely is, and also the idea if you can harness whatever passion that you have for the work that you're doing, wow, this is wonderful. Because to be honest, also the passion was me thinking through like a 9 to 5, you show up, you go to work and you have a real stressful week, you put in all these hours, all of that stuff, absolutely. But then that next week you still show up because you have that next job, the next assignment, whatever you're doing. As owning a practice, you can decide, okay, well, I'm going to schedule this, I'm going to schedule this time, this is important for me. So not only is like the income and the work and the purpose great, but also my home and my life and how I want to live my life is that much better as well. So this is a recording on the last of the fiscal year in federal government. So it's a really busy, stressful time for a lot of people. And me, just like last year at this time, would have been pulling my hair out on different things. And after we finish our conversation, my daughter and we're going to go watch a movie. We're going to go to lunch, go watch a movie, come back in the evening, do some coaching calls. I'll play some video games, enjoy my life as well. I'm watching movies again on Friday with some friends and such as well, knowing that I have clients established, facilitation established, training, my courses, all of that stuff kind of still there. So it's possible to have a life like this.
So cool to hear all that. And that time is priceless.
Priceless.
With your wife,
Yeah.
with your daughter, with yourself, with your friends. Huge.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so for everyone that's out there listening to this, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would like to share is just the possibility. Obviously, there's no guarantees, and my results aren't going to be everyone's results. There's people that are much further along than I am, and I'm just like so excited for them and so happy for them. Keynote speaking and doing a number of other things that pay extremely well. It's nice to know that this is possible. And if you have the chance to work with Jeff, to hear some insights, figure out for yourself what's important, this could be possible as well. It's your own journey, and that's what makes it just so remarkable. And also, Jeff, I love the pin. Thank you so much for wearing the pin.
Yes. So to say, so because you do things right. So this is, I don't know if people can really see this,
There you
but
go. Look at that.
and I'm a Gov geek, or we the Gov geeks, right? And then look at the stickers. I'm a Gov geek. I'm a Gov geek. Like, and then there's other stickers that came with the book too. Like you guys do it upright, man. Like you really do it upright. So Javier, thank you so much for being who you are. And I love to have been a part of your journey and to see how you've grown and blossomed. And it's still only the beginning, right? It's still only the beginning. So I just look forward to seeing where it's all going to go. And as we have some more milestones in your life and your career, you will be back on here to talk about them. I know you will. So thank you for everything.
Absolutely. And everyone, again, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Coaching is super valued and important. You help make people's lives better. So if anything there's to hold on to on that, I mean, giving yourself the opportunity to help others, I think is just phenomenal. And I want to applaud and thank you for everything.
Yeah, definitely. So check out his website. It's in the chat, thegovgeeks.com. Explore what he's doing. Get on his email community so you can see what's happening. And that's how we get to learn how other people are doing things by becoming a part of their circle. So anyways, Javier, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for watching. And we'll be back next week with some more great stuff.
Thank you all.